I wanted to keep a general theme, meaning that forgiveness is important. Believing in something bigger than yourself is important. And instead of just hearing, I know you know the difference, and listening, there's that very big difference between both of those. So
Mhm.
being able to listen to what you're trying to say and bring it into whatever genre you write, you still need to bring characteristics, hopefully, that you can get across to your readers.
We'll talk about this and much more today. Welcome to a Writer's Day podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to Writer's Day podcast. My name is Ruth Douthit, and I'm an award-winning best-selling author of books in various genres. And right now I'm settling on suspense, and I'm working feverishly on book 3 in my Desert Shadows suspense series. So head over to my website at artbyruth.com to sign up for my newsletter, where you can learn more about my upcoming projects. And also I give away a free book every month. So head over to artbyruth.com today. And I'm also working on my next coloring book, which will be about the Dragon Forest. That's right, a book that I wrote years ago, and I don't know why I never did a coloring book about it, but I'm going to for this Christmas. So I'll be starting drawing on that. I'm so excited to be working on that project. And I also have some book events coming up this summer too. And if you like today's episode, please be sure and subscribe over at YouTube, support me over at Spotify, and leave me a comment. I'd love to know what you think of today's episode. Okay, let's get started. Nancy Jasin Ensley is with me today, and she is a retired nurse, and she works with hospice. She's a counselor, and I tell you what, she is my hero because, like me, she writes all different kinds of genres: memoirs, science fiction, mystery thrillers, and children's books. So you know the drill. Grab your favorite beverage, a comfortable chair, kick back and relax as we listen to Nancy talk about her life. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am honored to be speaking with author Nancy Jasin today. Welcome to the podcast, Nancy.
Well, thank you for having me, Ruth. I really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. I love meeting authors who are new to me. So why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself?
All right. I'm Nancy Jasin Ensley. That's my authorship. I took my husband's last name as my author name, and I started writing when I was 8 years old, and put that away for a while, came back to it, and I've written ever since. 8 books so far, and I have 4 in progress. I write in all kinds of genres. I've been a registered nurse for 56 years, so you'll kind of guess how old I am. I, I'm not afraid to tell you that I'm almost 85, but I don't feel like it ever, especially when I'm playing with my grandkids and great grandkids. So
Oh.
I have let's see, 14 grandkids. I have 5 now, 5 great grandkids. I have a wonderful husband. I'm not a cougar. He's only 13 years younger than I. Cougar's 15. I enjoy music. I love dancing. I've been in a variety show for 25 years. I love portraying other characters, especially comedians. I have a good sense of humor. I enjoy life a lot.
Oh.
I'm not allowed to sing because a lot of people say don't sing, so I sing louder. I I love writing, and I'll go into that later. I'm sure some of your questions will ask about that. And
Yeah.
I have this is the first time I've ever had an agent.
Mm.
I've always done what they call niche or self-publishing myself all along. I have sent queries in the past, so I'll talk a little bit about that whole business end.
Hmm.
Let's see. I have a real strong faith. Um, I'm happy. I don't discriminate with anyone, no matter what. My parents taught me everybody is a child of some kind of power bigger than us, and you love them for who they are, despite who they are, and always use forgiveness. So that's kind of my character, what led me to be a nurse. And
Mm.
I originally started to be a doctor, and then I'll tell you about that a little bit.
Wow, that's wonderful. My mom was a nurse for over 50 years too. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So
That's great.
that means a lot to me. And I know that you've also done some hospice work,
Yes.
and I am a grief specialist too. I work with, I
Oh,
do run a grief support group. So yeah, that speaks to my heart as well. But I want to go
my.
back to your writing though. So you
Okay.
knew since you were 8 years old that you wanted to be a writer and you loved to write?
I did.
Wow.
My parents didn't have much money and we kind of had a rough childhood. So they would throw, my dad read voraciously. My mother was a concert pianist. She was fabulous. And so there's a lot of that talent in there. So luckily I had a few of those genes. They used to throw books and newspapers and magazines in my playpen. And
Mm,
I noticed that there was something similar about it. They had these figures on them that all looked different. That those were the letters of the alphabet. So I would match them with words that had them in them. And then I listened, and I'll talk to you about that,
mhm.
not just hearing, but I listened to them talking and put them to those. So by the time I was 4, I was reading, not wonderfully, but I was reading. And so
Wow.
that kind of led to my appreciation of the written word, uh, listening to hearing the sounds that they make, all of that. So, very, very blessed to be able to have had that in my life.
Mm,
So, by the time I was 8, when I was 7 or 8, it was Mother's Day. And I thought, I wonder if I could write a poem. So I went about it. I rumpled up a whole bunch of different papers until I got what I wanted. And I did a 6-line poem telling my mother how much I loved her on Mother's Day. She cried. She rarely ever cried. And she cried. And I thought, ooh, I made her sad. And she said, no, 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 you made me happy.
mm,
Sometimes crying is happy. So that kind of led me to, okay, I need to understand what people are feeling and ask them, are you crying because you're sad or because you're happy? So that kind of led to some other things. So I was very shy. I really didn't think anybody liked me.
mhm,
And so I went to Catholic school, and the nuns would ask who would want to go to the board. So I would go to the board right away because I knew the letters and I didn't have to look at the kids and see if they were making faces or laughing at me. And I always had a fear that somebody was, making fun of me. So I would go to the board and I'd write and write and write. And that became part of a way to express myself without
mhm,
having to stand before an audience. Um, that then led to taking risks and becoming a leader when I didn't want to. So over time, I got to write policies, procedures, magazine articles, medical things, all kinds of things. Started companies, and so the writing expanded in many different avenues. And I loved mathematics and
mhm,
science, so that all went
mhm.
into the writings that I did.
But then when did you switch to writing fiction and, stories?
after after I wrote my memoir, and several of the people that were close to me read it, and also some doctors read it in the hospital, and they said, "This is amazing. You need to write more." So I thought, okay, I loved Huckleberry Finn. I loved teenagers. I taught in high school. I had a teaching degree as well,
Mm,
and I taught vocational ed. So I taught it to sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And I loved the kids, even though it was a challenge. It was in the 70s, so it was kind of that segue between the 60s and 80s.
mhm,
So they were a challenge, but I loved them. And I thought, I'm going to write a story about 2 boys from different areas of the United States who had tragedies happen to them, and they met at a bus stop because we used to take buses all the time. So I
Hmm.
wanted them to meet, and they get into a terrorist cell, uh, trying to run away from them because they found out things about them. So that came to orphans, which I wrote. And so that was young adult. And then I love children because I had all these little kids ragruts running around. And my granddaughter, great granddaughter, was 6 or 5. And her name was Isla, Isla. And she put her hands on her hip and she said, I'm Isla, and you don't say the S. I'm going to do Isla and the Imaginary Iguana. So I did kids' books then. I had a,
Wow.
I had a grandson who was 14, and he was 12 when he first told me. He said, Grandma, I want you to write about a boy who's an alien, comes from another place. And I thought, okay, they probably wouldn't send a boy, but they might send a man. So I wrote Bartholomew Basselbein, Bernard Bartholomew Basselbein, which is hard to say, so we call him 3B. And then I had 4 different stories about this child of an alien, a guy from another planet, and who meets a lady who makes hats because it had to cover his antenna. So there. And then I thought, well, everybody, the doctor said to me, Nancy, everybody loves romance and murders. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, they do. So I thought, okay, I read every night. So I pick books from all different areas. My favorite is the 18th century, and I haven't gone into that yet.
Mhm.
But I started to write a murder mystery and a romance at the same time, Rainbows in December and Miter Corners. And I found that I could write really weird things, fiction, between midnight and 3 a.m. And I would talk to my protagonists, believe it or not. I felt them in the room, and I positioned them and I made faces at them and I said, no, you can't do this. And they said, yes, I can. And my husband would say, well, who are you talking to? This is so and so, and this is she. He said, there's nobody in this room. I said, you'd be surprised. So there you go.
Wow. So you write all these different genres like I do. I'm the same way. I had friends who said early on, no, 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 you should only stick with one genre. And I was interviewing an author years ago who became my hero because, like you and I, she said, no, try all different kinds of genres. And that's what I did. And so, but how were you able to balance writing across all those genres and still maintain your own voice? I mean, memoir to literature to science fiction. How are you able to maintain your own voice across genres?
And that's wonderful, Ruth. And I love that you have a support group. That is so needed. My husband lost his sister to suicide and needed that support and hospice
Mm.
as well. So I just, as a side, want to compliment you on that. Um, I, what I, when I started going from one genre to another, and it just kind of happened uh, from one group of protagonists to others seemed to move me from one side to one place to another. I wanted to keep a general theme, meaning that forgiveness is important, believing in something bigger than yourself is important, and instead of just hearing, I know you know the difference, and listening. There's that very big difference between both of those. So
Mhm.
being able to listen to what you're trying to say and bring it into whatever genre you write, doing that uh, kind of can stop you from, I'm not going to get my message across this way in this genre. That may stop you for a while. But it never did. It didn't stop me. I think I'm schizophrenic or something, but it didn't stop me because I worked really hard to keep that genre of forgiveness, how important that is, even though it's very slight sometimes in a murder mystery or romance. You still need to bring characteristics, hopefully, that you can get across to your readers besides the excitement, that you do with dramatic uh, fiction. So that that pretty much is my one of the character traits that I have, and I'm a caretaker and a nurse that's always taking care of somebody. Every day I get calls. I do counseling for young women or women who have had problems with addiction and
Mm.
mental health, and so that pulls into my stories as well.
I love that. And I'm a firm believer of that too, writing with a purpose, not just to entertain, but for some underlying, purpose as well. And
Yes.
I'm a big, proponent of that, in that our stories cannot just make people smile or cry, but can also give hope and light in this dark world. So have you ever, and you talked about being a nurse and doing counseling and working at hospice and everything, but have you ever taken a real life experience and used that as inspiration for a fictional story that you've written?
Yes, yes. Mitered Corners were a whole bunch of people who I worked with and students that I went to nurses training with in college and also in teaching. Said, I want to tell my story, but I don't want to write it myself. So can you put my story in here and you can change the name, make it fictional, but use my story. And so I said, oh yeah, I'd love to do that. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. And so that helped to pull truth into fiction. Mitered Corners was why I named it that was that when I was a freshman student, terrified of everything, I had a very strict supervisor, and she took me into a room in a private man in a private room who was having a lot of pain, and he kept grabbing for my hand as I was trying to make the perfect. Back then, we didn't have fitted sheets, mitered corner. And it had
Mm-hmm.
to be perfect, perfect diagonal, perfect 90 degrees. And after she said, that is not perfect. You will come back at midnight and you will do it. And he's pulling my hand and groaning. And I said, Mrs. her name, uh, I don't think he cares a hoot. I didn't say what I wanted to say. Oh, I don't think he cares a hoot whether this perfect mitered corners is perfect. He needs something for pain, and you need to get it. And I thought, okay, I'm out of here. You never talk back to a supervisor like that. And she goes,
Mm.
oh, all right, very well, very well. But you practice. You will practice till midnight until it's perfect. So to this day, I still make perfect mitered corner. So I took that as that life is not perfect, and you
Mm.
have to look at more and listen to the things that are surrounding you, so that you can take the right action or listen to the right in the right way, or be kind and understand where someone's coming from. So as you said, so much of that is needed at this time. I know that AI and all these things are great, but I can hear you and I can see you and I can feel you because of the things that you've told me about yourself. So that helps me to express the things that I identify with you and all of those things. That's listening. That's
Mm-hmm.
different than just hearing.
And that's true. And it's funny because my mom taught me mitered cornered, so I know exactly what you're
Oh,
talking about.
oh my goodness, of
But it's
course.
a good metaphor. It really is a good metaphor. And you're right. Sometimes, like the supervisor you were talking about, we get so tied up in processes and rules and regulations that we forget the human impact that we can have. And it can get that way with writing as well. We might become formulaic. We might know
Yes,
with a romance you have to have this and that and make sure you have all the checklists done to be a romance. Or even with the suspense, you need to have pacing, you need to have excitement and the villain and all these things to make it a suspense. But we can forget that there are human beings reading our stories and they come to our pages with some real trauma, some real sorrows, heavy burdens
they
that
do.
maybe our stories could help them escape just for a moment, but we can write a message, a clear theme and message in our story that leaves them with a little bit of hope by the time they read the end. So I'm like you. I think we want to entertain, that's true, but perhaps there's some hope that we can give folks in our little stories, whether they're children's books or suspense or, you know, literature,
Right.
science fiction. I love that you've written science fiction. I've always wanted to dive into that, but I haven't had the guts to do it. But whether, I mean, look at Project Hail Mary. That's a science fiction
Yes.
novel, but it
Yes.
has such beautiful themes of compassion and collaboration and hope, across the universes. Yeah, so I'm right there with you. We can help people with our stories. Mm.
Yes. You asked, and I didn't quite answer it. Has there been in something in my life? And I've had many children, PTSD,
Mm.
abandonment
Wow.
issues, and then I had a 5 year time in my life after I had my children, had a divorce. Uh, I continued to work, but I got into substance problems with
Mm.
alcohol, and I have been in a program for 42 years. And
Wow.
I use that support program. Oh, it has saved my life, Ruth. It has.
Mm.
And so that a lot of the women that I counsel and that I sponsor, we all need support,
Yeah.
for any iteration of health problems, mental problems, whatever. Need so much more of that. I understand where you're coming from. I empathize so much because I've been
Hmm.
there. And so if you can do that, I'm sure you see that in what you do. I think that's wonderful. And your mom being a nurse, I'm sure you heard.
Yeah, she was really great at showing that compassion. I remember it was pretty close to her retirement. She worked with geriatrics. And before
Oh,
that, she was in all different kinds of positions as a nurse and a certified nurse's assistant, But near
great.
the end, she worked with the geriatrics. But for some reason, they started getting all these men who were dying of AIDS
Oh,
arriving at the hospital. Yeah, this little town in northern Arizona all of a sudden was inundated with these 30-something-year-old young men dying of AIDS. And so they asked my mom to help out because they were becoming overwhelmed with all these patients coming in. And so she talked with one of them and he said, "Yeah, I'm from Washington State, and I kind of had to leave town and come out here because of the shame. I didn't want folks to know that I was dying of AIDS. So a whole bunch of us decided to come out here to this little small desert town and just end our lives here, end up here alone. He said, I have no family. All my family disowned me. I have no
oh,
friends. All my friends have died of AIDS. So I'm just coming out here." And she held his hand as he told his story, and she shared the gospel message with him. And, because he had no family members visiting, he was often all by himself in the hospital room. So she would come and check his vitals and then sit with him and hold his hand and just listen. Like you said, just listen to him tell his story. And so she told me this was like way back in I'd say around 2000, 2001, maybe even a
mhm.
little, I think maybe it'd been around 1999. And as I'm listening to her tell me this, I'm like, wow, this is incredible. She said, yeah, there were 12, 14 of them who just came from Oregon and Washington State, and they heard about our little hospital. So they came to die. This is it.
Oh
There's
my.
no treatment for them anymore. They're dying, but they all wanted to come out here. And so she'd go from room to room talking to them, tell me your story, asking them questions. And she said that first young man who was all by himself, she held his hand till he died. He died all by himself with her there, no family, nobody to love him. And so she
Oh,
told me that story, and I thought that is a true picture of nursing. If
yes.
there's anything, that describes nursing, that is it right there, that picture. And so I just loved that she shared that with me. And I just told her, wow, Mom, you really showed him love at the end of his life, you showed him love.
Love is the best medicine, isn't it, Ruth?
Hmm. And
Um,
so I told her, Mom, God put you there at the very end of that young man's life. He was only 36 years old and he
oh, so
died.
yes,
Isn't that
so young.
horrible? Yeah,
That
she
is
said he was so
horrible.
young.
To die alone is
Hmm.
so, we don't want anyone to be alone.
Yeah.
mean, maybe their faith is there, but you want a human to be there if you can.
Yeah.
You should, did you write about your mother? That's amazing. That's like a hospice in and of itself.
Exactly,
It is.
No, I haven't. I mean, she's gone. Her whole family is gone now. She had two brothers, a mom and a dad, and they're all gone now. And
Mm.
so I do eventually want to write her story. It's very unique. So eventually I probably will. But I told my husband I'm going to write a fictional account of her life, and I write fantasy. So I'm going to put it in a fantasy with dragons and everything, but it'll be about my mom's life.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Oh, I'll look for that.
Okay.
I'm still around when you get that done. I would love to. I'll check on your site and see when you do that.
Okay. Yeah, that's to
I
come
love
eventually. I do plan
it.
on writing that, probably starting it next year.
That's
But back to
wonderful.
you, though, as we wrap up, I just wanted to know what's coming next down the road for you. Do you have another project in the works?
I do. I do. I do love 18th century history. I have read series of some of those, and I want mine to be a little different. My sci-fi is quite different in a way. Um, I I would like to write a series, maybe 3 books about that and kind of the trajectory that the 1700s had on people and people in different areas of our country. So I'd have to do quite a bit of research, but that is a big project that I'd like to do. I'm
Mm.
writing a book called Lavender. It's a manuscript and talk about weird. I don't know where that came from. I love essential oils, and I
Mm.
love lavender, and that means peace. Well, this is lavender is the protagonist. She's a little a baby that is the result of a rape, and there's a whole story behind that. Kind of a rough rough story, and she has special powers. There's a gene that they've found in her genetic background. They had a genetic pool accessed, and this gene, they can't identify what it is. It allows her, she goes into the woods, it allows her to go by this rock, and she can take on other people's lives, and she gets
Mm.
adventures with those that she has no memory of from the time she's a child, 5 years old on. So that Lavender's, I'm working on her. I know the end. I always know the end, and I have to get there and make it
Mm.
believable. So that's one project. I have two short stories, and I am working on some scientific books.
Ooh, that sounds fascinating. Ooh, I love that. And listeners, you can head over to Nancy's website. What's the web address?
www.nancyjasinensley, that's all one word, .com. And that's a new website. You'll see all my books on there, the ones that have been remade as well with new covers. So all of those. And also these other podcasts that I've done, about 9 of those. So they're around. And my books are on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and Goodreads and all over the place.
Fantastic. So head over to nancyjasinensley.com where you can look at her books, testimonials, and more. And they can contact you maybe?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
fantastic.
If they go on the website, there are links to Facebook, to wherever, to
Oh.
be able to get a hold of me.
Okay, perfect. So listeners, be sure and head over to see Nancy's new website. And Nancy, this has just been such a treat getting to know you. Wow, your life experience, your writing. I just love that you try all those different genres. It's very inspirational. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Ruth. You've been a delight. I really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Wow, wasn't that great to listen to Nancy Jasin Ensley talk about her books and her life? Wow, what a life she's led. 85 years young, and she's still writing. So that should be inspirational for you. It was for me. So be sure and head over to Nancy's website to look at her books and to learn more about her, and be encouraged. Don't give up on your writing journey. Overcome those obstacles, because if you have a story to tell, God wants you to do it. There's someone out there who needs to read your story. So keep going. And most importantly, I thank you for listening today. I know you have plenty of choices of podcasts to listen to, so I'm honored that you spent some time with me and Nancy today. Until next time, God bless.